Ukraine's Air Force has received an enormous upgrade, courtesy of Sweden. It's not a fancy fighter jet, it's not a tactical bomber. In fact, it doesn't have any offensive capabilities to speak of. And yet, without even firing a single shot, this secretive plane is utterly destroying Russia's tactical plans and its hopes of winning this war. That plane is the Saab 340 Airborne Early Warning and Control (AEW&C) aircraft, also known as the ASC-890, and its arrival in the skies over Kyiv has been a long time coming. It was back in May of 2024, to be exact, that Sweden announced the transfer of 2 of these aircraft to Ukraine as part of its 16th military aid package to the country. This was the largest aid package Sweden had sent to Ukraine, valued at around 13.3 billion Swedish krona, which was the equivalent of around $1.25 billion at the time. But Ukraine wasn't able to put its new planes to good use straight away. Upon announcing the aid package, Swedish officials warned that it would take about a year, if not longer, to train air crews and maintenance teams, as well as prepare the necessary ground infrastructure for these aircraft to operate effectively. As a result, experts estimated that it wouldn't be until mid to late 2025, if not early 2026, until we started to see the Saab 340 actually take to the skies and start providing Ukraine's military with real, tangible benefits. And those estimates proved to be relatively accurate. It was in June 2025 that the first reports emerged of this AEW&C aircraft in operation in Ukraine. Up until then, many casual observers had wondered how valuable these planes would actually be. After all, the Saab 340 wasn't capable of launching long-range missiles or dropping precision-guided bombs on Russian infrastructure, so it didn't seem like some sort of game-changing addition to the Ukrainian Air Force's arsenal. Aviation and military experts, however, were cautiously excited about the arrival of these aircraft. They understood what a big difference these planes could make, not in terms of directly launching munitions and dealing damage, but in terms of providing invaluable intelligence and situational awareness, delivering the data that Ukraine needed to carry out both offensive and defensive operations. And in June 2025, the world saw exactly what the Saab 340 could do, as it played a leading role in a historic first, the downing of a Russian fighter jet. According to a report from the German newspaper Bild, a Russian Sukhoi Su-35 was taken out by Ukrainian F-16 somewhere over the northeast part of Ukraine. But this wasn't simply a jet-on-jet dogfight. It was a complex operation that began with the Ukrainian Air Force deploying several fighter jets to carry out bombing runs on Russian positions, both in occupied territories and Russia's own Kursk region. In response, Russia scrambled one of its leading air superiority fighters, hoping to bring the Ukrainian jets out of the air or force them to withdraw. Instead, the Russian pilot flew right into an ambush, and it was all thanks to the Saab 340. The AEW&C aircraft was already in the air, well before Russia's jet even left the ground. With its state-of-the-art radar system, it was scanning the surrounding territory for any signs of enemy movement. It had no trouble at all detecting the Su-35 and tracking it from literally hundreds of miles away. The pilot thought he was about to catch his enemy by surprise. In reality, Ukraine's fighters knew exactly what was headed their way, and once the jet was within range, a Ukrainian F-16 pilot used the data provided by the Swedish spy plane to launch an AIM-120 missile, sending the Su-35 spiraling out of the air. The pilot had time to eject, but the plane crash-landed 10 miles inside Russian territory. Now, these planes cost an estimated $85 million, and the Kremlin doesn't like losing such valuable assets. But its 4.5-generation fighter didn't stand a chance with the Saab 340 monitoring its every move. In the wake of this incident, experts and analysts shared their excitement about the instant impact of this AEW&C aircraft. Analyst Jake Bro, for example, wrote on X, "Russia lost another Su-35. Theory is that Ukraine now has operational their Swedish Saab AEW&C planes with their F-16 fleet. This capability took years to fight for and obtain for Ukraine. Bravo, everyone." The Ukrainian Telegram channel, Ukraine Fights, also stressed the importance of keeping these planes protected and well hidden, writing, "This is a historic moment, but now we have to camouflage the Saab as carefully as possible." And that's an important point, as Ukraine only reportedly received 2 of these planes. It would take only one good missile hit to put either one of them out of action for good, so Kyiv's forces have to take care of them. Fortunately, it appears they'll be doing a great job of that, as new video footage emerged in March 2026 showing one of these planes operating either within or close to Ukrainian territory. And it truly is impossible to overstate the importance of these aircraft. But before we look at the value they bring to Ukraine, let's take a closer look at how they actually work. Because the Saab 340 is not just a plane, it's so much more. It's a flying radar station, a fighter control node, a mobile intelligence gathering machine, delivering reams of real-time data to local and distant units, informing all the important decisions that Ukrainian commanders need to make to outthink, outsmart, and stay one step ahead of their enemies. And that's something that Ukraine has never had before. It's had ground radars, of course, and plenty of them, as well as fighter jet radars and surface-to-air missile batteries scanning the skies for any signs of aerial threats. The Saab 340 provides something completely different. An eye-in-the-skies platform powered by Saab's PS-890 ESA radar. Made with the REI system, this radar is mounted in a distinctive balance beam style fairing on top of the plane's fuselage. This is quite different from many other AEW&C aircraft, which often have circular radar systems instead. And this radar is no joke. It's capable of detecting air and sea targets at a range of around 280 miles. Flying at average altitudes of around 20,000 feet, it's also able to track not just dozens, but hundreds of targets at a time, 1,000 airborne targets and 500 surface targets to be precise. That's massive for Ukraine's situational awareness. Prior to receiving and deploying the Saab 340, Ukraine's forces were only seeing fragments of the bigger picture, bits and pieces stitched together from various surveillance systems, like recon drones and ground-based radars. The 340 changes the game, giving Ukraine the clearest and broadest view of the battlefield around it. And arguably, the most important aspect of this aircraft is its look-down radar capabilities. Look-down radar effectively refers to an airborne radar system with the ability to detect, track, and even engage enemy targets that are flying at lower altitudes than the radar platform itself. Ground radars are limited. They may be able to see for dozens of miles around them, but there are always going to be obstacles in their way, obscuring their vision, blocking their view, and interfering with their ability to detect the things they were designed to detect, like enemy fighter jets, bombers, drones, or missiles. Hills, forests, buildings, and more, plus the curvature of the Earth itself, all cause problems for these kinds of systems. And that's why so many aircraft and even some missiles and drones are designed to fly low to the ground, so that they can hide behind geographic features and effectively sneak up on their enemies with the lowest chance of detection. But those tactics are utterly ineffective against radar planes with their look-down capabilities. They don't have to worry about forest structures or even towering mountains getting in their way or obscuring their view. Scanning the landscape from above, they can easily pinpoint and track the likes of low-flying drones or cruise missiles. They're also capable of tracking another type of target, one that's been causing Ukraine major headaches throughout the entire war, one that Russia has relied heavily upon to deal extensive damage up and down the front lines, wiping out Ukrainian defensive positions, fortifications, armor, and troop concentrations time and time again. Glide bombs. But before we explain more, there's more where this came from, so if you're getting value from the military show, don't forget to subscribe. Now, glide bombs have been a huge problem for Ukraine throughout this war, and that problem has only gotten bigger over time as Russia has improved its technology. These bombs come in various forms, like FAB or CAB bombs, often equipped with UMPK kits that effectively turn them from dumb munitions into smart bombs, capable of using inertial and satellite navigation systems to strike their targets with only a minimal margin of error. Launched from relatively safe locations far behind the contested kill zones of the front lines, these bombs fly on low-altitude paths to reach their destinations, making them hard to spot on radar screens. Ukraine has attempted to counter them over the years through electronic warfare jammers, but Russia has continuously upped the ante, improving its smart bomb satellite systems and adding additional antennas to deal with the jammers. And while both sides continue with this back-and-forth EW battle, continuously attempting to one-up one another, Russia's bombs have caused carnage for Ukraine. gliding into frontline locations or beyond, into Ukrainian towns, cities, and supply nodes. They can carry warheads weighing several hundred or even several thousand pounds, wiping out entire buildings in the blink of an eye. And the biggest issue with these bombs is that they've always been so hard to stop once they've been launched. But what if Ukraine could stop them from launching in the first place? If Ukraine can track down the launch platforms, like Su-34 and Su-35 jets, and then pile pressure on them via their own fighters or Saab batteries, Russia's pilots will no longer feel quite as safe. They'll have to start launching their bombs from worse locations, longer ranges, or ideally, they won't be able to launch them at all. That's where the Saab 340 comes in. With their immense range and look-down capabilities, these AEW&C aircraft can spot Russia's bombers from nearly 300 miles away. It can feed information on their locations to Ukraine's fighters and missile platforms, which can then take action to intercept them. This is next-level situational awareness. But it's not perfect. As stated, Ukraine only has 2 of these planes. Even with their extensive radar range, 2 aircrafts are not enough to provide continuous and complete coverage of a country that's over 233,000 square miles in size. In addition, given their rarity and value, Ukraine won't want to put these planes at needless risk. Its forces most likely operate them in far western regions of the country, moving them between airfields on a regular basis in order to mitigate the risk of Russian airstrikes, as it wouldn't take much to deal serious damage to these aircraft or destroy their radar systems and render them relatively worthless. We can't be sure, as Ukraine's military understandably won't publicly share details about how it uses such important assets, but logic dictates that they most likely keep one of them in reserve at all times, ready to activate during intense missile or drone attacks. The second plane may carry out controlled sorties closer to the eastern regions, allowing it to get within range of detecting the Russian bombers before retreating to a safer distance as and when required. Either way, even with limited usage, these planes are making a difference. They're giving Russia another problem to solve, another threat to think about. Now, every time Russian bombers gear up for their next sortie, they'll always have that little nagging doubt at the back of their minds, that fear that Ukraine's AEW&C plane is out there, soaring somewhere above their position, watching their every move, relaying that information to other units that are already getting ready to take them out. That matters, because it will have an impact on Russia's bombing runs moving forward. While the Kremlin may have vast amounts of tanks and armored vehicles, it doesn't have that many high-end jets and aircraft capable of firing these kinds of bombs, and each one is worth tens of millions of dollars. These are high-value assets that Russia cannot afford to lose, and its commanders will have to treat them more carefully from now on. That means moving them further away from the front lines and ordering them to release their bombs earlier or at lower altitudes, which should in turn degrade the efficiency and accuracy of those munitions. That in turn should improve Ukraine's survivability all along the front lines. And that's a big win for Kyiv's forces. However, there is one other potential constraint related to the Saab 340 that's worth mentioning, and that's the Link 16 issue. Link 16 is a secure, high-speed, EW-resistant tactical data link network used by the US and NATO forces to exchange real-time combat data, images, and even voice between aircraft, ships, and ground vehicles. This system is the epitome of modern-day situational awareness technology, providing all units with the clearest and most detailed picture of the battlefield at all times. AEW&C planes play a huge role in Link 16 because they're primarily responsible for obtaining the data that is then shared across the network. Ideally, Ukraine would like a setup in which its Saab 340 scanned the surroundings and fed that same radar picture to nearby F-16s and other Ukrainian fighter jets, like the Mirage 2000, and even Western air defense systems too. This could make all the difference. The Saabs would spot threats ahead of time. Jets and air defense batteries would almost instantly receive that all-important intelligence, and the entire network would be able to respond as one seamless, integrated structure. There's just one problem. In 2024, reports suggested that Ukraine's F-16s may have had their Link 16 systems either removed or disabled due to concerns about the technology falling into Russian hands if the Kremlin forces were able to shoot down or capture a Ukrainian fighter. Since then, it's neither been entirely confirmed nor denied that Link 16 connectivity is available to Ukraine. But there is a possible silver lining here. In March 2025, reports emerged related to modifications of Ukraine's F-16s. Those modifications may have included some sort of partial or even full restoration of the Link 16 system. If so, that would be huge for Ukraine, giving the country's jets a massive advantage over their enemy and an almost unmatched ability to track and hunt Russian glide bomb platforms. But even without Link 16, the Saab 340 is a terrific addition to the Air Force's arsenal. It upgrades Ukraine's surveillance and detection capabilities far beyond what there had been in the earlier stages of the war, and opens new opportunities for tracking Russia's aerial threats and stopping them in their tracks. And the benefits don't stop there. Later versions of the Saab Eri radar system are said to include synthetic aperture radar (SAR) and ground-moving target indication (GMTI) functionality. The former helps to paint a detailed picture of surrounding terrain, while the latter is used for spotting and tracking enemy troop and vehicle movements. If the 340s in Ukraine's possession have these technologies, they're not just good for spotting and stopping Russian bombers, but also for monitoring their ground forces too. If that's the case, that opens up even more prospective applications for these planes. They could be used not just for defensive operations, but for surveillance missions in occupied territories and frontline regions, tracking Russian assault teams, tank columns, armor movements, and more. And let's not forget that this isn't the only aircraft that Sweden has pledged to send Ukraine's way. In October 2025, Stockholm also promised a batch of up to 150 Saab JAS-39 Gripen EF supersonic multi-role fighter aircraft, boasting exceptional operational flexibility, advanced avionics, high survivability, superior electronic warfare capabilities to cope with modern-day threats, and impressive agility levels as well. These fighters bring a lot to the table. Together, the Gripen and 340 could form a formidable duo and bring Ukraine's air defense capabilities higher than ever before. They could even combine to help Kyiv's defenders exercise some level of aerial dominance along frontline areas or over occupied territories, which would make it much easier for ground forces to conduct assaults and recapture lost land. For now, those are hypotheticals, but there's nothing hypothetical about the Saab 340. These planes are quite clearly in use in Ukraine, scouring the skies and scanning the surrounding land, providing a steady stream of intelligence for the country's armed forces, adding a valuable layer to the country's kill chain. Capable of seeing further and clearer than any ground-based radar systems, the 340 is so helpful for Ukrainian fighters and air defense batteries. It helps them find and prioritize targets more quickly and efficiently than ever, gaining a head start on their enemy, while forcing Russia to either rethink its strategies or risk losing some of its most important assets. It's a huge boon, and with more Swedish aircraft on the way, along with other Western weapons and systems in various forms, Ukraine is only getting stronger from here on out. In fact, even Russian officials are starting to reluctantly admit that Ukraine is gaining momentum, and that this war is no longer going the way the Kremlin wants it to, which you can learn all about in this video. Alternatively, check out this video to find out how and why Russia's casualty rate has skyrocketed in the early months of 2026, with more and more of the Kremlin's troops being cut down only days after arriving at the front lines. And finally, for more breaking military news, analysis, and breakdowns of strategies, tactics, and equipment, make sure to subscribe to the Military Show today.